The president of Americans for Prosperity is with us. His name is Tim Phillips, and he is working on a grassroots organization on Stop the Spending Spree. You can find that at stopthespendingspree.com. Tim, welcome.
Good morning, Glenn.
So glad that you're here. Is anything that I said about the dollar, I mean, roughly, I'm sure we disagree on finer points, but do you see a way out for the dollar to remain the reserve currency of the world if we continue down this road?
There's no way. At some point, we're going to reach a tipping point. We're already seeing tremors, Glenn, the inflation that we're already seeing in the first 100 days of this administration, the anemic jobs reports 2 months in a row at a time when those job creation, Glenn, should be exploding. A lot of that is the spending, overheated spending that the government is doing.
And you're exactly right. This would be the biggest recovery of all time, the fastest and biggest recovery. I think Donald Trump, I worried that V-shaped recovery wouldn't happen. I think it would have if the government was out of our way. Yes.
It was already happening. No question about that, Glenn. And when you look at the $1.9 trillion they just spent a few weeks ago, the 2.3 in this, and I'm doing air quotes. You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes. The infrastructure bill, with the tax increases thrown into that, and don't forget, nearly almost another $2 trillion on what the universal pre-K and the free community college, all told together, another $4 trillion approximately that they're already proposing, Pelosi, Biden, and Schumer. It is an absolute tipping point. We're going to lose this reserve currency. We're going to see inflation. You know, I was a young boy in the late 70s, so I don't really remember it, Glenn.
I remember it because my folks were in business for themselves, and I remember them talking about 18% interest rates. We can't do an 18% loan. They're killing us.
No. And think about this. We've had artificially low interest rates. At some point, even if the Fed tries to keep them low, with inflation exploding, if that continues, Glenn, we're going to see interest rates go up because the market's going to drive it, even if the Fed tries to stop it. And that means the servicing the debt we already have and that we're piling up by the trillions right now, it'll eat up an even bigger portion of the federal budget. Yeah, that's what we're looking at here.
We had, I think it was 7.6 was the Fed rate in the early 80s or late 70s, right around there. If we had a 7.5% interest rate today, it would be about $2 trillion just in the servicing of the debt. $2 trillion. Right. Our whole budget is $3.
That's right.
And no way out.
So what we're talking about here is a spiral that could literally wipe out this economy of ours. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Certainly our prosperity and freedom would be wiped out or curtailed.
So
it's a crucial moment for the country right now on the spending and size of government front.
It's going to be hard with forbearance, with the if you understand what the government did and forbearance and what that's going to mean to renters and people who own their houses who haven't paid the rent or the mortgage for a while, I think you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be ready for the government to give them yet another handout. The Republicans are almost useless in Washington. How are you going to convince the American people that this has got to stop?
The media is not going to help us. We know that, the dominant media. Sadly, the corporate culture, and you were just talking about what's happening there with this woke and the woke move and frankly, the drift toward a partnership with government rather than freedom among a lot of big business, sadly to say that. What we're doing at Americans for Prosperity is a congressional district by congressional district march to build grassroots support, awareness, to go after, in a constructive way, to go after this infrastructure bill, to make sure that we're delivering tens upon tens of thousands of individualized contacts to these members' offices. Because here's what we're finding. The first 3-4 months of this new Congress, they've been able to run through in the House of Representatives some extreme legislation. I know you've covered it, this election bill, the PRO Act, so much else, under the radar screen. And so on this infrastructure bill, we know we've got the summer ahead of us, the late spring and summer, to raise awareness. So we're doing rallies, events, and backing them with follow-up advertising and further community efforts in the goal of literally driving tens upon tens of thousands of Americans to call their House members, because that's where this next spending bill originates. They all originate in the House, but that's the fulcrum right now. And here's the thing. We're only talking about needing to flip, I believe, roughly a dozen and a half Democrats on this big tax and spend package. And so we've got to make sure the Republicans are feeling pressure, because you're right. On spending, they have been a disaster, Glenn. You know that.
Disaster.
You've documented it. They've been a disaster. So left to their own devices, they will drift away. So we've got to make sure we maintain pressure on them that they don't get a free pass here, that if suddenly the Democrats are in a jam on this infrastructure bill and they announce, you know what, we're going to do a bipartisan skinny infrastructure. Instead of 2.3, we'll only spend $1.2 trillion or $1.3 trillion more.
Didn't what's his name, Turtlehead, McConnell? Didn't McConnell already say that he was going to do that?
They have already started talking about that, and so that's why it's not only the Democrats. We're also making sure. And here's the thing, Glenn. Some of the most rock-ribbed Republican House members on the Second Amendment or on life issues or on other issues, when it comes to spending and the size of government, they just go wobbly, or not even wobbly. They just lose their way. That's why I know you may be listening today and you may be thinking, your listeners, hey, my House member is great. Don't assume that. Make sure that if they're a Republican, you're calling them and you're saying literally, hey, I don't want to see this $2.3 trillion tax and spend infrastructure. I don't want to see a supposed skinny infrastructure at $1.1 trillion or $1.2 trillion. Our nation can't afford it. They've already appropriated so much money anyway. They can readjust. They can adjust some of the money they've already appropriated to focus on roads and bridges, which is a core function of government. So that's why we're asking people, make sure your House member is locked in and feeling your feelings, your beliefs on this. Yes, we got a few dozen Democrat districts. I was just in, I'm still in Dallas, by the way. I was in Congressman Ulrich's district in the Dallas suburbs last night for a big event at the Museum of Biblical Art. Great crowd of folks there kicking off the pressure effort to move him away from Pelosi on this. I was in the Detroit suburbs 2 days earlier, Glenn, in Slotkin, Congresswoman Slotkin's district in Oakland County. Yeah, we've got our targets that we think are the most, the Democrats in these swing districts that we do think we can move. But we're asking listeners, your listeners, which are such a potent force, to not assume their own House member. Even a lot of Republicans who were good on so many, other issues on spending, they just go south. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the water in Washington, Glenn. I don't know. I don't get it. But Republicans, this is the biggest issue where they fall short, in my view, is government spending and the size of government.
Okay, so how can our listeners get involved and help? Besides making sure that they're congressmen, that's the first thing. But what else can they do?
We're going to be doing a lot of social media on our Facebook page. You can go to Americans for Prosperity on Facebook or the Stop the Spending Spree website. Go to that site and we'll cue you in to events that are coming up. When they're in your area, turn folks out. Or frankly, Glenn, in Dallas last night, we had folks that were driving over from other districts just to be a part of this so they could go back to we had a group from San Angelo, a long drive, as you know, across Texas last night, coming to this event last night because they said, hey, look, we want to go back home. We want to show our support in this all-red district, but we're going back home tonight when this is over. And our Republican rep out there, we're going to start a group right here on Stop the Spending Spree that is getting emails and calls and contacts into these House members. Everyone has a social media footprint just about these days, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, MeWe, whatever it is. There's so many platforms. Parler's back up, so many. make sure that you're using those platforms to tell your friends and allies out there, hey, it's a big moment. Talk to your member about this infrastructure bill, about all this spending. Tell them to vote no, and make sure, whether they're Republican or Democrat, you're delivering that message. That you can't just say, oh, it's only these 27 or 30 Democrats we got to worry about. Candidly, it's every member.
Oh, it is.
You're right.
It is.
Senator McConnell was wobbly on this, or is already talking about some kind of skinny bill. Even members that you may be going, oh, they're good on pretty much every issue. Maybe they are. And a lot of them are. On spending, it's not true. They're almost all bad. So use your networks, your personal footprints. Go to these events. You can hit this website. You'll see the events upcoming for us. For example, Monday, I'm going to be in Florida on one of the Gulf Coast districts there. It's a national effort, but locally focused on your House member.
All right. Tim Phillips, the president of Americans for Prosperity. You can find them at Americans for Prosperity. You can also go to stopthespendingspree.com. If this is your issue, I mean, every issue can't be mine. You can support by attending these things. But if this is your issue, organize and reach out to them. They will help you. Make sure that your district has the right person in Congress. This is vital for our survival. StopTheSpendingSpree.com. Tim, thank you so much. We'll talk again.
Yes, sir, Glenn.
God bless.